Hey everyone, I'm Emily. I wanted to check in with you regarding production of Gallery, the new tabletop RPG out of Open Grade Funk, where we're at right now and where we're going to be heading pretty soon, how far along things are, and what's already finished. So Gallery is going awesome. I'm really pleased with this project so far. The game is shaping up really fun from a design standpoint. It's shaping up really fun from a gameplay and world standpoint. I think it's got a lot of really fun topics to approach and an interesting world to do it in. For those of you who are not particularly aware, Gallery is a fantasy tabletop RPG dealing heavily in things like queerness and the trans experience and a lot of just different kind of metaphors that sort of revolve around a life that is a little outside of what would be considered normal, and how the concept of normalcy in general is a bit of a fallacy, and just sort of what that experience looks like from within it. It's a game that is speaking to those who have lived that life as opposed to trying to convince those who haven't that it exists. I think it's really pulling that off rather well. I've been having a lot of fun writing it. This book is full of different fictions, it's full of different stories, it's got a lot of different perspectives in it, it's got artwork from people who have lived these experiences. I'm excited to see it all put together. It's been a fun writing opportunity, it's been a fun design opportunity, and I think it's going to have a lot of just really interesting gameplay, regardless of your walk of life. If you are somebody who has lived these stories before, you're going to find a lot in here that you recognize, and if you're somebody who hasn't and are actively going, oh, this isn't for me, you should rethink that a little bit. Every game that you've played in the past has been made for you, and all the people who have lived these stories have sat down at those same tables and tried to find a space within them. You are invited to do the same here. Gallery comes to the table with a lot of really cool products. It's beginning with a full rule book, heading somewhere in the 250, 260 page mark. It also has a kind of guides guide, a book where everybody at the table will want to have access to, but don't necessarily need to have in their possession. I'm calling it a one per table book. That is about 150 pages, give or take. That will also be releasing at the same time, so both of these tomes will exist simultaneously. And the cool thing about that is that it is starting with a monster manual. It is starting with a kind of setting guide. And it's beginning with a lot of interesting niche rules that aren't required for every gameplay run through, but really help expand the experience a little bit. It's also starting with the miniatures line. It's begun production already. I'm hoping to have 2 of the enemy factions fully modeled out by the time we launch the Kickstarter for the actual miniature line, with the remaining enemy factions being part of the stretch goals for that Kickstarter. Unfortunately, or just kind of like in reality, the last thing that is likely going to be modeled in terms of miniatures for this game are the actual playable characters, and that's mostly because there are a lot of them and they are all wildly differing in their shapes and sizes, so it is difficult to move from one model into another the way that I can with factions, where everything has kind of got a coherent look and feel. So that will certainly be an aspect of the miniature line, but it's going to be kind of a deep stretch to get to. Regarding Kickstarters, there was a lot of hope to have this game kickstarting this year, and mechanically it can, but financially it isn't really a thing that is going to make sense. Unfortunately, Kickstarters are not necessarily like a 1-month process like they kind of appear to be. They are a 4 or 5-month process, depending on what it is you're making. So you have the time leading into launch. You have the launch itself, that takes a month. After the launch, it takes another month to actually get your funding. After that, you have to send out the proofs. Those take a month to process. By the time they come back, there will inevitably be something wrong, so they have to get reproofed, which is another month. By the time you're actually fulfilling, at least 4 months have passed, maybe even longer depending on how long shipping is taking. And the tricky thing is, if you do not get your money spent on fulfillment before the year rolls over, then that money is just considered income and it all gets taxed. So a huge chunk of it just kind of flies away, which we don't want, right? We want to have the money that was brought in to fulfill actually be used for fulfillment, which just means that it is not financially wise to kind of launch the Kickstarter this close to year end. So what that means is we're going to have a bit of a build-up. We will probably hit the miniature Kickstarter prior to year end. We'll likely launch with that in the hopes of drumming up some support, a little extra money, and also just kind of get some interest in the franchise. The nice part about that one is that most of its production is just in-house. It's me building off of my printers and my modeling software, and that means that the money can immediately get put towards supplies without it just kind of vanishing into the void. This also means that we have more time to generate artwork. I have some really wonderful artists that are working on Gallery. I'm excited to bring in some new faces with this one that I haven't worked with before, but I'm really excited to have them kind of involved. I also have a lot of returning favorites from HSD. So there will be several artists in the book that you've seen before, and I will hopefully be able to introduce you to some new faces. If you are a long-time follower of my products, there will be some people in here that you haven't seen through my work before, and I'm really excited to feature them. Just amazing, beautiful artwork. I would name drop a couple, but we don't necessarily have our contracts finalized yet, but talks are ongoing and are going very well. And I'm really excited to have them on board. Gallery is a very large and unique world. I'm fleshing it out in the stories within the book so that people who are kind of engaging with it have a lot of context to go off of. There's no historical lore dump like you saw in HSD, or is traditional of a lot of, I think, more sci-fi stories, I think, than fantasy stories. Certainly, we had it a lot in the last game. This one is less concerned about the historical events than it is about the feelings that brought you to the space to begin with. It is very much an exploration of what brought you to a place and the growth that involved and anything that's going to take place afterward. I would call it an extremely character-driven game, which you would think would be true of many RPG settings, and it is. But I think there are certainly some that are a little more focused on how you fit into the game's overall social structure than they are to who you are, and you can actually use that person to damn the social structure if you wish to. Gallery is a game about being a creature that doesn't necessarily fall into certain rules, and will encounter many of them and have to interact with many of them in many different ways, but is ultimately answerable largely to itself. So there's all kinds of opportunities here to just kind of like find things and grow things and cultivate things and break things if you don't like them. And unlike certain other games, including HSD, which have these kind of like monolithic structures that it kind of seems like no matter what, I'm not going to be able to topple this part of the setting because it's just too big. In Gallery, you have an enormous amount of personal agency and power, and you can, in fact, topple huge structures in this game and kind of radically rebuild the landscape. And depending on how complex and varied you want your scenario to be, that could be a good thing, that could be a bad thing, that could be all kinds of different things. This is a time-hopping setting, this is a dimension-hopping setting. There are consequences in all sorts of different directions, and there are opportunities in all sorts of different directions. It is entirely possible to never play the same kind of game twice in this particular setting, and to even never encounter the same locations if you don't want to. Or you can kind of pick one large project and continue through multiple generations. I don't want to drag this particular video out too far. This is just kind of hey, the setting is doing great, it's on its way, and it's going to be out here relatively soon. We're moving into testing now kind of video. So I will summarize with the things that I just said, and also with the tentative timeline of a miniature Kickstarter later this year, obviously coming up pretty soon because we don't have a whole lot of year left, and a launch of the Gallery Kickstarter early next year, January, February kind of deal over there, depending on where things land and which art takes longer to come in. But you're bound to all see previews prior to that. There are certainly lots of things to look at. I have chapter-by-chapter breakdowns available on the YouTube channel. We also have a test game currently going that is being put up on YouTube so that you can see how the game is playing. That's going great. It's got 8 sessions up at the time of me recording this, with more to come. So there's lots of material if you're curious about Gallery and would like to play along.